Hello, thank you for joining us. This is Movie Grade. I'm your host, J.R. Alva, a voice actor. I'm joined here with...
I'm Jay Anderson, a manager and commentator at PWL.
And I am Victor, a writer at Modern Myth Comics.
All right, thank you guys for joining us. This weekend, we had the opportunity to catch Kill, an international film from India. It was an awesome action-packed film, so fortunately, it's action, so I really enjoy anything that has to do with action. So first impressions on the movie, myself, it was action-packed. Needless to say, I enjoyed the action. Acting-wise, I think everyone pulled their weight. I think it was really well formatted to what they were trying to do. I do have a couple little issues here and there, but we're going to dive deep into this movie. But first impressions on my end, I enjoyed the movie. It was a good movie. What did you guys think?
Well, I hate to be the Debbie Downer, but yeah, my first impressions of the movie was it was certainly a movie. That's it.
Ouch.
Honestly, I enjoyed this film. I think it's a great action film. If you love action films, you will find it quite enjoyable because everything from the characters to the setting to the story, it delivers. It puts you in a place where it's set mostly on a train. So it takes you down one direct line. And so these characters always have these tough choices to make, but it always leads them in one direction.
That was one of the things that I know that we were talking about after the movie was, being put in a compact situation and having to, basically fight your way through this, whereas if you're in open space, I myself, action aficionado and also a martial artist, I always look at things and like how things move. And so when I look at someone move a certain way, it really draws my eye because I want to see if they know what they're doing, So to me personally, putting in that compact space, I think they used the proper movement. They used a lot of great movement. They definitely articulated according to the space, and whoever directed it was very well aware of this. There's a lot of stuff you can't do in certain spaces, and they used the spaces in this movie really well. So, going into it, visual effects wise also, I think they used it was more, not really visual effects, but it was more, practical effects. Thank you guys. So the practical effects, it worked really well with what they were doing. So that was one thing that I did tip my hat to was the practical effects on that. How did you guys feel about that?
If we're going just based on what you were speaking about and elaborating on it, choreographing was actually really good. I'm not gonna lie, the action is top notch. Okay, if you are into action movies, I think the action is clearly there. I love the makeup and the environment itself. I'm always a big fan of bottleneck, scripts. That's where you take a whole story and you isolate it into one singular location. Best example that comes to mind is my favorite episode of Seinfeld. They're stuck inside the waiting room at a Japanese restaurant or Chinese restaurant, waiting for their table. The whole episode, just them waiting for their table. I love stories like that. They're called bottleneck scripts, and I just like that. So, like the use of that type of format. I love the action to it. Honestly, the action and the makeups were there.
Also, I think the director, Nikhil Bagish Biat, sorry if I mispronounced that correctly. Google's not a great translator sometimes.
Nope.
But I think he's a very good director. From his other work, which is, how am I pronouncing it? Herdang. It's a movie on Netflix. It's a very good movie about, in the early 90s of India dealing with the, restrictions to who could get an education. Very about social structure and very much similar themes towards this movie were about marriages and how culturally you go about to deal with relationships. But beyond that, I think a good action example for setting, not comparison, but to say the same ideology is Die Hard. You have someone in a building having to use limited items, using his wits and whatever he can find to get out of the situation. And this film does very much the same thing. The story, all the effects were great. there are some effects like that are obviously CG, where like for like to his certain CGI effects you notice, and they're similar to his film in Herdang, where there's a fire, and you can obviously tell it's a bit visual, like it's more CGI.
Those were some of the things I did notice too. There's a couple scenes that you could tell, well, like, well, you can't do that safely in that environment, you know. So there's definitely some stuff that you obviously have to film a certain way. But going back to one of the things, one of the key elements that we were talking about was having to do with the culture, and something that is really prevalent is speaking of culture and speaking of acting. You know, because most of the time we look at a certain movie that we're used to in our country, and what we are normally aware of, you know, and the way we view things. So, you know, looking at the acting, to me, I don't have too much experience with that culture. I have some, mostly, but mine was more on the Pakistani side, but there are some correlations to that. So looking at more of this is being based off of India, the acting was very, you know, like I thought for what the culture and acting wise, there were some differences, obviously, but I mean, I think they were pulling off a lot of what they were supposed to, you know. There were some times that you know, you were teary eyed because of what was happening. And that kind of was like, oh, wow, okay. You know, that was different. Even when it came to the antagonists. Because the antagonists come off, and you think normal antagonists, oh, just kill the guy. But you look at these guys, and these guys all, you know, the way their inner circle works is kind of different than the way, you know, we conventionally look at things, at least. So to me, the acting was pretty spot on. You know, how did you guys feel about the acting?
Oh, I thought the acting was great because, granted, okay, like you guys said in the previous review had that I wasn't here for the Quiet Place Day One. All these, essentially, almost every film follows a formula. Yeah. So in action films, it does follow its formula, but I think what it does its formula is give a different take. And not every director is. He was not a director of typically action films. So this is like maybe a first for him. He's been a director for 20 years. I could be wrong on that. I don't know. It's hard to find a lot of his, some of his work, since it's outside of America. You know, sometimes streaming services are different. But beyond that, like, the action does serve well. He looks like he's studied a lot of action films, and granted, they do use the same similar ideas. When it comes to protagonist, he stands out very much. He's very different. He's motivated. He has his motivation for why he's doing and where he's at, why he's on the train. But beyond that, he has a sort of secondary motivation because of what his job is, who he is beyond that. You know, he's sort of a military commando. So after a while, he sees a dangerous situation. He goes and thinks, how can I keep these people alive? How can I get everyone out here safe? And that's what's very interesting. Where his friend, I feel so bad for the guy because he gets dragged along on this journey. And it's kind of a rough journey to get just dragged onto when you're trying to just help out a buddy. And all the other bystanders were excellently acted, where they're all terrified. They're in a situation where they're in a tight, narrow space. There's nowhere to run to, where you can't jump off the train and know you're going to land safely. Yeah. And the antagonists, they do stand out. Fani, who's sort of like an underling, but he's like an agent of chaos, to use a lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. He's just out there, and he's a wild dog chasing cars. And he's just, granted, he has his mission and agenda too, but he just stands out so much. Well, along with like several other, like you could say the goons within that gang, these bandits, they all have like visually they stand out. Where in action movies, you always kind of have like a taller goon, a bigger goon, it's kind of comical goon. You know, these guys stand out. They have their differences. You can really tell that they are like just different people, not the same kind of like, yes, I'm the silly goon who dies in 12 seconds.
Yeah, you know, and going on what you're saying, I'm going to hop on just the last part of what you were saying. The bad guys alone, to me, were like the best part. You know, the drama between the antagonist was actually a really high point of the film for me. The fact that you had your, they're all bad guys, they're all evil, so don't get me wrong, but you have like the older generation sticking to a code of conduct, sticking to a code, sticking to the rule books. These are the rules. We do this. We're not hostage makers, blah, 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 whatever the situation may be. And then you got the younger generation that's more violent, more volatile, almost like a pack of rabid dogs. And what do you expect? You raised them in this criminal environment. And that storyline, that subplot really stuck out to me when these guys were mourning their losses. I mean, these people are evil. These people are evil as shit. Sorry for the cursing. They are evil, okay? But you know what? You feel bad for them because they're crying and they're sad. And, if you didn't catch the title, the movie's called Kill. So a lot of people die here and you feel bad when they die. And you're like, wow, I'm actually kind of feeling bad for these guys. Just the reaction. Again, they're bad people. Then you remember what they did and you're like, oh yeah, I kind of want the rest of them to die. Now, that being said, I feel like acting-wise, those guys got it. The other characters, not so much. I'm actually going to go on the opposite direction here and say that the hero, I didn't care one bit for. His personality traits were, I know how to kill people, and I love my girlfriend. Done. That's it. There's no other motivation. There's no other characters. And the one time he acted was good. He made me feel just once in this whole movie. I was disconnected. I'm not going to lie, guys. I was very disconnected. I was rooting for his friend more than anything, And, without getting out, we can get more into that later as we talk more about it. But personally, the bad guys were the only ones that truly did most of the acting for me. They did all the heavy lifting in this movie. And I think if it wasn't for them, the hero wouldn't have stood out. It's called the foil effect, Batman only looks cool because the Joker is foil. He goes under the diamond and makes it shine. That's what these guys did. They were a foil to the hero, and they made the hero shine, but they worked with very, very little.
I gotta say, I disagree. I think the hero, he was played more stoically. And there's some elements, some scenes where he got done the stoic persona a little bit better, but I do think he wasn't that bad of a hero. He's a very good hero for this story. He suits this story because he's trying to, a lot of this director's work, it goes to Herdang, when I saw this recently, similar story structure, where it's a similar protagonist trying to choose between these two different things. And if they have the time to get their situations in order. And that's where I saw, let me pronounce his name. He was Captain Rathud.
Mm-hmm.
Armit Rahud.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm pronouncing it correctly.
That is how you pronounce it, yes.
Okay. I think he had a lot on his plate where he had all these situations. He had these pressures from people, whether or not they knew the whole scenario, what they with him and his girlfriend. He had a lot of these problems arise, and his friend had to, like I said, go through a lot of that. So he had to kind of make up for it because his friend was sort of on the side. So I do think he was a very good hero. There are some moments, he could have been a little more than a stoic actor, but I do think sort of like maybe this is like a first-time action movie from the director. Or this is a first time trying in this style where it's a little more violent than his usual film. Mm-hmm. Where that's a different notice if I've seen in from his other films. They're not as violent out there because it is a violent movie. Yeah, it doesn't play around.
Oh, absolutely. And to go on my final rebuttal, I do actually agree with you that, yeah, he probably is a good hero for this particular story. I will give you that he works for this story. But for me, I find that myself to enjoy like a protagonist role or the main hero itself. I have to find myself sympathetic towards them, find myself caring for them. And because of the lack of, backstory, the lack of anything, honestly, I didn't sympathize with the main character. And maybe that's probably where the disconnection came from me, but, to each his own, I guess.
It's true, because I don't think sometimes action films, mainly this is kind of main thing in action films where they generally start out where it could be like a husband and wife. Let's take The Punisher, for example. But Punisher, it's like you don't know anything really about his family life, but his family gets killed, and you just know that he goes off on the bad people who killed his family. It can be as simple as that, and that can sometimes work enough. Well, I think with this film, there's a thing they use in the film that does fill out the space of what his character is, and you can definitely tell it. Like I think within the opening of the film, not giving any much away. So in the opening film, you kind of get a sense of where his prior is at when he's not on the clock. But in a sense, they could flesh that out. They could have fleshed that out a little more, but I do think you have to also think of runtime and think of where the story needs to go next. Because when you're writing a story, kind of go, where does it go next? Because sometimes if you have an idea for a scene, does it make sense? Does it help this scene? Is it there for a reason?
Well, you guys made some really interesting points. And I want to add more to everything that you guys were saying, but we need to dive deeper into this. So with that said, for our viewers, just so you guys know, I'm going to go ahead and release a spoiler-free version first. So you guys are going to get this first with spoiler-free, with our grade. If you want to join us and you don't care about spoilers, then join us tomorrow for the Spoiler Zone episode. With that said, we're going to go ahead and dive in deeper into this movie. All right, guys. So going back into what you guys were saying, going into the characters, the character work, and everything. Honestly, I'm obviously, just like anything when it comes to martial arts, particularly, I'm always going to have a one-sided look at certain things, about a few things here and there, because just the way I look at the way a fight's supposed to go, and obviously, if it's a real fight, the movie would end a lot faster. That's not the way it's done. Films are done so that it's appealing for people, the way they look at it and everything like that. It's eye candy. If it's not eye drawing, it's not eye candy, then it's not a movie. So, there's a lot that you can do when it comes to a martial art film. And that goes with saying, like you guys were saying, he's a commando, going into the main character. So he is a stoic character. He is a character that, he's very,
he needs to stay calm in a situation.
He does need to stay calm in a situation, but he's also, in this particular film, he's, his goal oriented. His goal is separate from a mission. So, and the sense, his goal is to get to his loved one, the girl that he loves. He's trying to get to her. He's going to do as much as he can. And in the beginning, yeah, he's looking at, trying to take care of her and stuff like that. But more so, it's like, how do I save lives at the same time? So, and I totally get that. And so, the complexity of that situation, when you look at the main character, the protagonist, I was trying to see, like Jay was saying, I do also see what you were pointing out. He's goal oriented in that one part and everything like that. And you don't actually get to see a good amount of emotion coming from him until, obviously, spoiler zone, until she dies. And it is until then that you really get to see him cry. You really get to see him really have that deep emotion. Unfortunately, there's a previous passenger that dies, and he has some kind of an emotion. You see the shock that happens, but at the same token, to me, I'm like, you're military. You're not supposed to be in shock. I mean, at that point, are you a novice? But you're a captain. Your rank tells me you're a captain. So, how are you shocked all of a sudden someone getting killed? That shouldn't be a shocking moment. Killing and death is something that, and any military personnel that has told me, is something that you get used to after a while. And especially if you're a captain, that means you've been in service for quite some time. Death is not something that should shock you at all, at that point. So to me, I see where the stoicism that you were pointing out, Victor. So I get what you're saying. So the stoicism and all that. So there's a complexity into trying to film this movie with a character that is a captain. He's a commando, as they call them. I guess that's their special forces branch in India. So to me, there was a lot to take in and trying to see how realistic this can be. So, with that being said, what about you guys? How realistic did this feel to you?
No, okay. Well, I kind of want to go back to the character talk real quick before I answer that, and explain my point of view as far as the character. Now that I can get more into the view, I believe that stoicism is like it's just it is very easy to do and easy to portray. I hate to admit it. If you're acting, it's easy to portray because stoicism is really taking yourself out of the stressful situation and trying to look at it from an outside point view in, keeping calm and collective. You're acting. These people aren't dying and this isn't real. So acting stoic is actually easier than you think. And I say this as someone who's actually taken acting classes and done performances. It is easy to portray. That being said, I didn't feel for this guy until they explained to the dad that his daughter died. Now, the girlfriend itself did a lot of the heavy lifting. She literally had no personality besides, I love this man. And don't get me wrong, the love between them was great. But that was it. At some point, I was getting frustrated. I wanted her to do something. And when she finally did, they fridged her. And I was like, checklist, another action trope checked off. But it was, again, just to motivate him. And everything there was just either an obstacle, a prize, or just something to motivate the character because the character didn't do much to me. He just loved his girlfriend and was a commando. That's it. That's why I give credit to everybody else, even his partner, even his psychic, who they didn't let him kill anybody till that fucker got it.
He technically his partner killed the first person on the train.
All right, he gets the first kill.
He got the first kill on the train.
But after that, I just felt like it was like stuck to the theme of Dragon Ball GT. It's Goku time. Nobody gets to do anything but the main character.
No, but I do.
And that's how I felt. I mean, that's how I felt. As for like realistic, how realism it felt, because of all the practical effects they used and everything, the environment and stuff. It looked fun. It looked really good. I praised them for how realistic it looked and stuff. But again, I just couldn't get behind the main character. I was rooting for the bad guys more than the good guy. I'm sorry.
Well, going back to the character thing, I do think he first does have a sense of feeling of like this might not end well once his friend is hurt. And there's a moment where they both look at each other and it's like, are you okay? Like, and are you sure? Before they have to do something action-wise. So I do think that's where it first strikes him, where it's like, okay, I got to make sure my bro here is okay. I got to help him out. I got to help, my girlfriend's family out, and then I got to save her and also someone else as well. So I think that's where more his emotions started. I think sometimes stoic performances, they can be a little wooden. And I think it's just because essentially this character, a lot of times action movies, it's always like a military-based character. A cop, it's someone who's been in action, and you think, okay, they're used to this. But after a while, I think there's a sense where it's civilian. It's a civilian getting hurt. These are civilians hurting each other. I do think there's somewhat of a difference with that.
Mm-hmm. There was something also that, like speaking about the main character, because like I said, once his love interest dies, that's where a switch is turned on, and that's where all of a sudden, all bets are off. And it wasn't until that happens that all bets were off. And I think that was my complaint. I think earlier that after we watched the film was, why was it until she, got killed that all bets were off, when the first kill when it comes to passengers was basically was a student or a teenager, you know what I mean? And to me, I was like, wait a minute, they just killed a kid. To me, you just killed a kid. Why did you wait until your beloved was the one that bit it? To me, the moment that somebody that is innocent, in this case, you take an innocent life, that should have been your immediate moniker to start taking action and start taking lethal action. Because in the beginning, I can understand being in a more of a controlled environment where you're trying, okay, I can try to subdue these guys without having to lead to that. And so it kind of does. I think that was the one-sidedness that I did not appreciate about the main character, the protagonist, was that it took that for him to turn that switch on. And to me, I think it should have happened sooner. To be completely frank, when it comes to me.
To go on what you're doing, I mean, if I could just elaborate with that, I mean, I would love to agree with it. But first things first, before we get to that point, before I disagree with you, I did love the part where, you know, when that switch did go on, all of a sudden we finally get the title of the movie. They do that in that show Invincible, where every once in a while you go through like an entire episode, 20 minutes into the episode, they'll be like, hey, maybe we can get some help from. And then all of a sudden the title will interrupt and you'll see Invincible. And when you edit that, I really hope that you cut me off and put the word Invincible.
I will put Invincible.
Anyways, so I love that part because when that happened, it signaled to the audience and it was a creative way to, one, finally give us a title, you know, scene, and two, indicate to the audience, no, the switch has been flipped. And I like that because I could actually agree with the realism that he wouldn't kill people at first. A lot of military people get in trouble for using deadly force on civilians. And probably his goal in the back of his head was probably thinking, oh, my buddy just killed a guy. Can we keep it down to a minimum? Maybe we can do this without having to kill everybody. The moment the woman died, he was like, oh, this is war. That's why they recruited the kid. That's why the kid who wanted to be a soldier. That's when they started recruiting deputies, because this was war now. And I think that was like the part that I can kind of like disagree with you with. That I like wasn't so much a complaint for me, but so much as a, oh, okay, I could see why that happened.
So it's more of a filming standpoint, so much less than a realistic standpoint. All things.
It's not a filming standpoint. It's more the situation. There's a cop when he finds someone like, say for example, a criminal has someone a gun to someone's head. You just shoot instantly. No.
Ideally.
Ideally.
That may happen in some places, but like in a situation, the response is to try to de-escalate the situation. And if that happened in the movie, he would have just gotten a whole bunch of people dead.
Yeah, pretty much.
The movie would have been over like in and out.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
Based upon what you said, if he acted like that, the movie would have been over in and out. He would have been dead.
In a sense, I'm agreeing with you. This is a guy who, you know, actually followed the training and chose to de-escalate before killing stuff. I think your point is it's not realistic because everyone would just jump to the killing part.
Because also he had to save all the other people. He was thinking about the lives, not necessarily just, oh, I need to stop these people. He needs to save these lives. And how many trained?
I didn't get that part.
Trained? I saw that he was trying to think, I gotta save these people. I gotta save my girlfriend's family. At least he had to say, I think
the girlfriend's family, yeah.
Again, that goes back to the whole character thing too. Like, is this the character standpoint? Because if you said it first, his partner was the promise to his girlfriend. His partner was the first one to kill the first guy, which meant that partner was already doing what he was taught and trained. Mm-hmm. The guy, you come at me with a knife, that knife is gonna be turned into you. That's natural training when it comes to any officer or anybody. If you come at me with a knife, lethal force is advised. You're talking about cops. This wasn't, like you said, there were some hostage situations when there were a lot of guys that came at them with lethal weapons and they did not respond with lethal force. And if it was a cop, like you said, a cop, you come at a cop with a knife, he's going to shoot you. Plain and simple.
They're trained to actually physically take you down too first.
No.
Not to shoot you first.
Why do you think the first thing they do when they see a weapon is they pull out their service arm?
It's to show you that they have a gun.
No, that's for their safety. And that's something that is actually trained by officers. They pull out their service weapon and their first instinct is, hey, please put that arm down. Put your hands above your head. Okay, drop the weapon. Put your hands behind your head. And etc. They have a code that they're supposed to follow. But nevertheless, if you are attacking an officer of any kind with a lethal weapon, they are able to use lethal force.
Yeah, but they don't immediately shoot first. This isn't the scenarios that have gone on for the last few years.
That's actually true, because the other countries do hold their cops accountable.
The British police don't carry guns.
Yeah, that's actually true.
Yes,
and that's why, like, it didn't seem like. I don't know how India's police force
It's
functions.
paramilitary.
It's paramilitary, yeah.
So okay,
So their lethal force is advised the moment there's a lethal weapon, and of course that also
Yeah,
goes.
but that's
debatable
going
where,
on.
like, yes, it is an
And-
action movie, but the guy doesn't,
And
in
again,
his head, doesn't live in an action movie. He lives in this story where he's trying to get his girlfriend and her family.
If this was in realistic terms, if this was a military personnel, green, let's in U.S.
matter what
terms,
rank of-
special forces commando of some kind. Special forces, these guys are expert killers. Why do you think so many of them died immediately once that flip was switched on? That's exactly the whole point. He's a commando and he can kill people with ease. And he was able to show that. And that was one of the things that I will say about the movie, is when that switch was flipped on, and that's when he started taking all these guys out. Mind you, this is still a hostage situation, just like you said. So shouldn't there have been more casualties when it comes to the victims? Because nevertheless, as you go on through the movie, there was still a lot of them that they were using as, they kept telling the passengers, go ahead of us so that
I
they
think
get
that-
so they
I think
get
that
the
was an
brunt of it.
oversight from the writer, from the director-writer, where I think he forgot he had those characters there.
And yet another plot hole.
There you go. There's-
Now,
I wouldn't call it, maybe they hid. I would think they hid before we call it a plot hole. Because in my head, I kind of like this director's work. I do like this movie, where I wouldn't think they hid. But also, yeah, it could be considered a plot hole. But no film's really perfect.
no film is perfect.
No film is perfect.
No film is
but-
perfect, so there's always going to be a thing.
But that is a bit of a plot hole.
But in my head, I was thinking, I would hide. I would put they have little, curtains.
the ones that were saved, fortunate, good thing, and then of course there, whatever, unfortunately there are some casualties, and whenever it comes to a situation of lethal force coming from any end, is usually casualties. So that's
So there was one of the goons who did have a gun. So that's why, and even one of the other goons told I think it was Fani who told one of his father, who was kind of sort of leader, no, let's not use the gun.
Yeah, but he also said because they backfire. Because I think that one of the things I remember is that was the time that his buddy got shot, and when he got shot, the gun backfired, and he even what the heck? And he even told his buddy, hey, that the gun, don't shoot the gun, it backfires. So that also kind of shows something. Oh, hey, that's one of the reasons why they don't have firearms, is because they're shoddy, or they just don't know how to
maybe
make
gun
the
laws are different in India. Who knows?
Perhaps gun laws might be different there. So, and that just kind of goes to show, that's another cultural difference possibly from what's going on with the story.
Could be from England. In England, it's very hard to get a gun, and England did rule India for quite a while.
They did for a while. But
So it could be that they limited the amount of they have a gun control thing.
Possibly.
Somebody research.
Again, this is also a film, and that's something that one of the things that we have to look at. A film, as much as a film will try to portray real life, it is a film, and it is a show. And if the moment he started doing lethal force from the beginning, like you said, the movie would have ended a lot sooner. And that
Yeah,
would
they just killed everyone. That little link, whatever they call it.
whatever, and in real life terms, and that's one of the things is, also our protagonist might have not made it either in real life, and that's one of the things that would happen.
There's no way he could have made it in real life. I mean, we're in spoiler territory. So there's a scene where, this moment, okay, in writing tropes, there's a moment called the all is lost moment. That's where our heroes lose everything and it doesn't look like, there's any victory in sight. This movie had 3 of them. So on the third all is lost moment, he finally walks into the bathroom, beaten and bruised, and it's time to bandage himself. It took Zippo lighter fluid and gauze tape, and the man is moving around like he had the healing ability of Wolverine. So I think we can go ahead and count a lot of points off the freaking realism.
Yes, exactly. I think any action movie, action movie,
Exactly.
will we call Die Hard realistic? No, but it's a fun movie.
It's a fun movie. And that's
Yes,
the whole
that's
point.
why we wouldn't
The whole
call it
point.
realistic.
And that's the point.
If you
It's a
walked
fun
on
movie.
glass, you would have tons of little cuts and be bleeding out.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
that's-
when John McClane would have just died halfway into career.
One of the things I will say is to all viewers out there, action movies are action movies for a reason. They're a show. Realistic situations call for completely different situations and measures. In realistic terms, things changes everything. So that's one of the things that we always point out, though, was realistic measures when it comes to a movie. How realistic would this feel? And unfortunately, this does happen, though. realistically speaking, stuff like this does happen especially in countries I'm not gonna say it always happens in India. I'm gonna say in other countries it does happen where they're on a train and they all get robbed. I mean, I've heard of it happen in Russia. I've heard of it happen in many different places, and that's something that
here.
and in Mexico, I've had somebody tell me they were glad that they stuffed a few $100 bills in their sock and that all they took was their wallet, And so this kind of stuff happens. A lot of times, just comply, give them what they want, and just hopefully leave you alone after that, next after that is going back to the point that you said that the all is lost moment, going to memorable moments in this movie, and that's something for me. I've been trying to pick out my memorable moment for this, and I think honestly, I'm gonna have to go back to his partner. His partner to me was really helped carry this character. I honestly think that without his partner, the movie wouldn't have been the same. And so the moment the partner, unfortunately, he bit it, but he fought tooth and nail, damaged and everything, and he was one of the main things for me. To me, when his partner died, I think that was more memorable to me than it is his love interest dying. To me, that was the memorable moment, because it was like, oh man, like this guy, he fought tooth and nail as long as he could, and with all the damage that he took and everything, and he still tried to pull his, he just tried to live and go and help everybody regardless, and he kept putting himself in front even though he was the one that was damaged. He was like, no, he would push people behind him. They're like, no, you're hurt. He's like, no, it didn't matter. I think he really pulled his weight on all that. I think the memorable moment for me was his partner and pretty much a lot of what he did. What about you?
I feel like the only reason that's your memorable moment is because his partner actually knew how to sell an injury. No. All right.
Yeah, a lot of it, he had a lot of adrenaline going through.
A lot of adrenaline.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my memorable memory for me, I was going through the movie and there were several scenes that stuck out to me. I'm like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Oh, that's going to be incredible. That was amazing. If you ask me on the top of my head, I'm actually trying really, really hard to find that memorable moment, because to me, it was like, it was just a simple fleeting high, if you will. There was great moments, but none of them stuck. They would kind of blend together. But if I had to isolate one, it's probably when all the bad guys walk through the hallway and see the corpses of all their men and all of their loved ones and family members just hanging, just hanging there,
That's psychological warfare.
It's very psychological warfare. And there's this whole huge belief, too, that if a body doesn't get to rest when slain, it creates bad juju. The spirit will never rest. These people were mourning for their family because they're not going to rest, so it's deep. It's harsh, but that would be a memorable moment. And probably when the uncle turned into Ghost Rider, because my God, how dry was that man's face? What about you? What's your memorable
I would
moment?
say there's 3 memorable moments. There's one early on where they sort of set up a trap where him and his partner Virush and Captain Rahud.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the T silent, spelled like Rat Hood. There's a joke like that early on. They're kind of set up where he's first hurt, but he looks at his friend like, "Are you sure you're okay? Are you sure you can do this?" And I do think there is a memorable moment with his girlfriend where she does tell him, "Get my sister back," and it does stand out because he thinks about that a lot. He keeps hearing he thinks her and the sister's name, Tulika. Tulika.
Tulika is the wife.
The girl. I'm sorry, pronunciation is wrong. I'm trying to learn these, but Hindi is a bit of a hard thing to pronounce.
And you know what? Thank you for trying for us, because aside from you, we haven't really tried the names, because I know that we would botch them really bad. So thank you for making that attempt for us, man.
I tend to do research for whatever I watch. That's when I watched the other film, Herdang, where I was like, okay, how do I pronounce the director's name? Nikhil Bagesh Bayat, and Bhat. Yeah, AT is really hard to pronounce.
I think that's a bot.
Yeah, Google was sort of helpful with that.
All right.
And I do think there is the moment, after I guess, where he entered like a berserker mode. I guess a Wolverine type thing. Where I guess I don't know how much adrenaline this man has, but apparently he has a lot.
Definitely. No, that main character definitely pulled out all the stops.
Unless those cuts were not deep, I don't know.
Oh my god, really? It is, I guess like a 2-inch blade inside you isn't deep enough. It's just a flesh wound, guys.
Oh, actually, fun fact. One of the things, a show that I remember watching previously, they had a doctor on site. Old show, I think it was called Deadliest Warrior. I don't know if you ever got a chance to see that.
Oh, Spike
But-
TV show.
But they literally said that particularly for lethal force or for lethality, that a 3-inch blade or longer is preferred when taking a life. That a 2-inch blade, you actually might survive. So, and obviously it depends where, because if it's in the neck, all you need is an inch. But it's one of the things that I did appreciate. So if it was a certain size of blade, it's actually, you have a better chance of survival, needless to say.
I want to take this moment right now to thank you, J.R. Alva, for educating me. Here I am making a passive joke about how a 2-inch knife is going to be the end of good old Anderson, and you went ahead and educated me, letting me know that it doesn't count as penetration unless it's 3 inches.
Also, one, you should have post whenever you put the weird visuals, the more you know. The more you know.
Definitely, the more you know. All right, guys. Well, I think that covers all our segments. Thank you guys for joining us in this. If you haven't been here before, we don't do things on a 10-point scale. We do this from A+ to F-. This is the chance where I get a chance to ask my guests what grade they give this movie. Guys, what grade do you give this movie?
Well, I guess I'm going to start, guys, and I'm going to start the same way this action movie starts. Good old hit here, and just a stab of lethal force. I'm giving this thing a C-, okay? I don't like action movies. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I came in here with a biased thing. The main character is boring. If it wasn't for the bad guys being interesting, I would have graded this lower. C-. You passed, but you did a lot of misspelling. What's the main character's motive? I'm sorry.
I'll give it a B+. I like action movies. I like movies in general. So I'll watch I'll look at any movie and try to find the good points and the bad points. This movie, was it perfect? No. I still found it entertaining. I thought the cast and acting were all right where they needed to be. Whether it was the villains or the heroes. That's where we can disagree on how they are. Some performance really better, like the main one of them, I guess sub villains, Funny, really stands out. That dude he's a complete psycho, but he was completely watched. He was a little more. Let's say he was interesting. You just look at him, you kind of know he's a complete loose cannon variable that's just thrown out there.
Very interesting points, everybody. And again, just like you, Mikey, I love action movies. So action movies to me stand out most of the time. I'm gonna definitely look at this and the martial arts aspect, quality, the fact that this was done in a narrow space was really, really well done, portrayed when it comes to that. I will deduct a little bit of points just because I think it's more. I have to say more because of the acting. I don't know if maybe it's because of a cultural difference or what, but just some of the acting to me was a little bit diluted. More particularly when it comes to the protagonist. But when it comes to the villains, when it comes to the action, when it comes to, doing in-your-face stuff and everything like that, this is filmed on a moving train of all things. I'm going to have to give this a B. Definitely going to give this a B. I would want a little bit more. When it came more to the protagonist, the acting. But other than that, though, I think it was a well-rounded action movie. I think that if you're an action movie, if you like action movies, I think you're gonna like this movie. I think you're gonna enjoy yourself, and you're in for a thrill ride when it comes to action. Particularly if you love martial arts action, I think you're gonna have fun with this. So on my side, it's a B. And so looking at all three grades, we got a C-, we got a B+. I guess this gets a B-.
I think it makes it a solid B. All the average together, I think that makes it a B.
A solid
Sorry, we're no longer in A territory, but you know what? A B still passes. So if you like action movies like I do, it's definitely we all averaged out to a B. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for your grades. Really appreciate you guys being here. With that said, thank you guys. This is Movie Grade. Please do us a favor. Hit that that like button and the subscribe button. But please, if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that bell so that you guys get the notification that when we have our next upload. YouTube hasn't really been able to show things. If you're looking for us also, for some odd reason, if you type out Movie Grade alone, it's not going to pop out on the search engine. Please use the acronym at Movie Grade 0013. Our channel name is GeoRa Productions. So that's our name. So you can look for GeoRa or at Movie Grade 0013. You can also catch us on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And thank you guys for watching. Once again, I'm your host, JR Alva, a voice actor. I was joined here with
Jay Anderson, a manager and sometimes commentator at PWL. You can watch me anytime at Pro Wrestling Legacy El Paso, all social medias, and watch my client Thrash kick some ass.
I'm Victor. I'm a writer at Modern Myth Comics.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us, and thank you guys for watching. You guys have a good day.